Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. This, I know, in my experience with CSC, is our first virtual performance or proposers conference. So, you do a lot of things on the heels of a pandemic. And one of our things last year was our planning year. We appropriately are now releasing our healthy children category, and that is on the heels of our planning year and a new strategic plan. So thank you so much for joining us from your offices or your homes or wherever you're able to join us today. And we appreciate the opportunity to give you some information about our upcoming funding cycle. A few little housekeeping things here. Those of you who have been on for a little while are aware that you are all muted. You will not be able to speak unless the host gives you that permission. We will, however, take questions throughout the process, and there is a Q&A button down on your screens that you can feel free to post questions. We will make every effort to answer those questions promptly. We can answer them both in writing or live and interrupt the presentation. Now, if the question gives that opportunity, we will certainly do that when possible. There is also an opportunity to call on any of you out there if you raise your hand. I would encourage you to first take advantage of the Q&A window, but if there's something that you just have to say, raise your hand and we will get to you eventually, and then enable you to speak and unmute you. So hopefully that'll work out, and we'll be able to address all of your issues throughout, because I know this is normally a two-way process with questions and answers. I think what our plan is to hesitate a bit after each slide, so that if there are any questions that pertain to what's just been shared, we'll have an opportunity to answer that. So I hope that this works well and that it gives all of you the opportunity to learn as much as you can before we get into this funding cycle. We're all excited here at CSC to have you join us in that effort, and we can move to the next slide. I do want to introduce everyone today. Those of us on the panel will introduce ourselves as we speak, because we are here because we have speaking parts and you need to see us during that. But clearly we have many other staff here at the Children's Services Council, and since there are some new folks on this Zoom call, I just want to introduce them briefly to you to let you know that they're listening and they're in the background and certainly available to you and to us throughout this process. Our newest staff member is Sheree Ramirez. She has joined us. She's been with us just a week, but she has joined us as our manager of community engagement. I hope you've seen some of the social media posts introducing her to all of you. We look forward to having her engage with each of you on our work to at least bridge that gap between our community relationships and the council's work. Christine Georges is my administrative services manager and my assistant, and also the support for the council and the building. And she does everything that keeps me aware of what I need to be doing from day to day. So she is somebody that you will no doubt interact with at some point in your time with us. Jennifer Carter is our fiscal specialist. She's joining us from home, but she is listening in, and Zach will be doing the presentation on behalf of fiscal, but Jennifer is a key part of our fiscal staff and has been doing most of the day-to-day interactions with each of you, and will be working on budgets and those kind of things as we move through this application process. Carol will introduce herself later. She's already spoken with you several times. Nicole King is also on the call. Stephanie Macera is our administrative assistant or executive assistant for our program support. Stephanie puts together most of the documentation attached to our grant review process as we move through and make decisions. So she has been our spreadsheet queen for many years and will no doubt serve in that capacity very capably with this round of funding. Frances Coletta is our finance administrative assistant. She assists Zach and Jennifer in all of their work. And then finally, Daniela Listosa, who's at our front desk. As we have been closed, like many of you, you've not seen her a great deal, but she manages all the ebb and flow in the office for vendors and anyone visiting us and for all of our tenants. So that is our staff. Again, those of us who are on this call will introduce ourselves to you as we speak. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you I'm David Heaton. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Services Council. And believe me, I could not do what I do without all of the people I've just mentioned. They are essential, and we have an exceptional team here at the Children's Services Council. I know you'll learn that as you interact with each of them. Next slide. Just some comments about this this health priority, this healthy children priority. All of you out there probably know this is a competitive grant process. So essentially, all of you who have been funded through this category have been waiting for about 5 years to have this category open up and receive additional consideration, perhaps for expansion of your programming, for modifications, for more resources. All of those things are definitely on the table, but you're starting at kind of zero. We have 44 people or 44 participants on this call. That may represent about 44 organizations who are looking at opportunities within this funding category, and it is in that sense competitive. So I encourage you to assume that when you complete your application and when you draft that document, that you do it from the perspective that we don't know anything about you. We don't know who you are. We don't know what your capabilities are. So you need to share all of that in your responses. We are fortunate this year to have a completely online process in the grants module within SAMIS. So that process is hopefully going to be easier for you. It's a interactive process that Kara will go through and show you how to access and utilize. We also have a citizens panel that helps us review our applications and helps us make decisions. They come to us with expertise that is perhaps outside of the current council staff realm and bring added value to our review and make sure that we stay connected to our community and make decisions that are reflective of our community's wishes. That process and all of this cycle will go through a calendar for all of that in a few minutes. But I just wanted to remind you of those few things. There are some changes this year. Those of you who have been around for a while and interacting with us for many years will notice that within this strategic plan, there's some additional expectations. And this health priority is the first priority we're rolling out or releasing to community application under that new plan. So it's very important that you refer to that plan, and Chanda Narkowitz will be talking about that in her presentation later. So hopefully that gives you just a high-level introduction to what we're going to be doing today, and I will pass it off to the next slide.
Good morning. I'm Chanda Narkowitz, and it's a pleasure to be with you today to roll out our Healthy Children Funding Priority Area. This language is in the RFP, and to summarize, according to research, we know that the foundation for healthy development is built early. In fact, efforts to support health and learning are critical in the time frame of prenatal to age 3. And cognitive, emotional, physical, and social capacities are not only important through childhood, for example, in later school success, but it also impacts our well-being and our health into adulthood. Next slide, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Laura Haase. I'm the Director of Program Operations here at CSC. And we are accepting applications for the health priority under the 3 subcategories: maternal and infant health, mental health and substance abuse prevention, and physical health. Dave mentioned the strategic plan in his earlier slide, and we are just strongly advising and encouraging everybody to read over the strategic plan, particularly the investment statements that are part of this plan, as well as the quantitative data and the related research that's on our website. Kara will navigate that later on in the presentation, so she will show you how to access and where to find that plan. But again, we're strongly encouraging that you read that before you start your application. Next slide, please. I just want to highlight some of the key dates. The actual online application was released last week, and that is available on our website. Again, we will show you later on in the presentation, if you haven't already accessed it, how you can access the application. Today, obviously, is the proposers conference. The PowerPoint that you see here today will be available after today's presentation. So we will be mailing it out to the attendees and also have that available by request if anybody is looking for it. On April 27th at 5 p.m., all applications are due, that they are to be submitted electronically. And again, through our new grants module that Dave mentioned earlier. So that will be a new feature this year compared to those of you who have applied under the other RFP 4 or 5 years ago. Once the applications are received, we will be going through the review process, both internally with staff and with our citizens review panel. That review will take place through the end of April and early May. And then we have June and July set aside to follow up with any applicants as needed. If we need some additional information, we will either, we will be doing those virtually, but we will schedule some time to meet with you if needed. And then our recommendations will be going to our council at the August 23rd council meeting. And then for those of you who have received CSC funding in the past, and those of you that are new to CSC, in the past, our contract years used to run July through June. That is no longer the case, and all of our contracts will be running October 1st through September 30th to align with our fiscal year. Next slide, please.
Good morning, my name is Nicole King. I am Kara's counterpart as a contract specialist. And I am going to be going over eligible organizations. You can see from the slide here that we have a reference on our website for policies 1.1, which kind of identifies what eligible organizations should meet when applying for children's services funds. I'll just briefly go through that for any newbies on the Zoom. As you might know, as an eligible agency already, we fund not-for-profits and incorporated organizations, neighborhood organizations, local government organizations. However, we do not fund for-profit organizations. Organizations or programs that operate under the exclusive jurisdiction of the public school system are prohibited. Programs requiring worship or religious instructional activities as a condition of participation shall not be funded. Programs of organizations with their own taxing authority are limited to 2 years of CSC funding. CSC funded programs are required to be in direct alignment with the goals and strategies, as you can see also outlined on this slide, of our current CSC strategic plan, and not supplant existing resources, and involve collaborations with our community partners and within the public and private sector. The target population for the purposes of the funding through CSC is limited, obviously, only to Martin County children and families, youth, prenatal up to 18 years of age or older, if in high school, or if developmentally disabled as defined by the IDEA Act and under 22 years of age. CSC will not provide funding to organizations for the acquisition of real property. A lot of these questions will be asked again of you when you begin that certification process within grants module. As you can see, eligible organizations may apply as they're proposing a Martin County-based program. We have highlighted that this is a competitive process for eligible organizations. All organizations who are currently funded by CSC under this Healthy Children Funding Priority Area with the intent to continue, revise, or expand the program also must submit an application online. Again, the application process is competitive, and we are going by the guided principles outlined, as you can see, and the strategic plan for 2021 through 2026. And as you can see on the slide, I won't read those to you, but you can also visit our strategic plan on our website and learn more about the policies of program and fiscal policies that all eligible organizations should adhere to. Next slide.
So the program and funding policies document can be found on our website. And again, in addition to the strategic plan, we encourage everybody to read over those program and funding policies ahead of time before you submit your application, because if there is any policy that you cannot meet, you must submit a waiver request to CSC. And that's actually would be done at the time of your application, that you would submit that waiver request within the online grants module. And really the only two items that are fatal flaws with regards to this application is one, that you must submit your application electronically by Tuesday, April 27th at 5 p.m. And two, that your executive director or equivalent, CEO or whatever title, must certify that the information provided within the application is true and correct. And again, that statement is also in your online application. Next slide.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Zach Hackley, and I'm the Director of Finance. As you see, the first point, the budget and staffing table within the online application. These are two separate tables. So first, I want to talk about the staffing table. The staffing table has a bunch of different categories that must be filled in. It starts with like position title, the name of the employee, how many hours a week this employee works, the percentage of time in the program salary, percentage of program salary requested by a CSCMC, fringe benefits requested by a CSCMC, and the number of pay periods. Carol will give an example of this later on as we go through the slides. The budget table consists of only 4 categories. It starts with a GL line item, and then it goes to the proposed program costs, and then the CSCMC costs. And there's also a narrative for each line item. As it relates to the budgets, I see 3 common mistakes. Each GL line item has a narrative, and the goal is to be as specific as possible, but not too specific. For example, John Smith will attend a national conference in New York City on October 10th through 14th. That is very specific, and it's dedicated towards one person. A better example would be the program director, not John Smith, will attend 40 hours of CPE throughout the year applicable to his or her position. That's a more general, but still detailed enough to suffice for the program description or for the GL description. Another common mistake is each GL account must be balanced. You don't know how many budgets I receive where the total funding is not in line and not in balance. So every GL line account must be 100% balanced to 0. Mistake number 3 is budgets will consist of line items that we won't fund. And as Laura said, you can go to our website and see which categories we fund in our funding policies. But one of the examples is food. Everyone knows that we really can't fund food, but we'll see programs and budgets coming in with requests for CSC to pay for food. That's just kind of me getting into the weeds a little bit, but I want to kind of give some examples of the mistakes that I've been finding as I've been here in my short tenure. Moving to the next bullet, the total agency organization budget. There's a place for these to be uploaded. We're going to need a total organization budget. Moving down to the supporting documents that we're going to collect through this online application. We're going to need your list of your board of directors, your IRS 990, and your latest audited financial statements. Keep in mind, if you do receive funding from us, your audited financial statements are due to us within 180 days of your year end. If we do not get them in that time frame, we're going to need a letter from your auditor requesting an extension. Next slide, please.
Do we need to take a break and address any of the raised hands that I'm seeing pop up?
Do you want me to go forward, or do you want to answer some of the questions? Okay, I'll move forward. All right, I have 4 slides on my favorite topic, program evaluation and research. This slide refers to the online application, an actual narrative field that will allow you to give us a little bit of information about interventions and curricula that you are proposing within your program application. So you can see there that we're interested in whether any interventions or curriculum are research-based, evidence-based, or research-proven. And this taxonomy was provided to us by University of South Florida. You don't have to determine if your interventions and curriculum are fitting one of these criteria. If you have research that's associated with your interventions and curriculum, the related materials will state whether they're research-based, etc. Some of the terms are different. For example, they might use the term promising practices, research-informed, etc. Use their terminology, and to respond to this question in the application, for every intervention or curriculum that meets the rigor of one of these terms, please provide a little information as to the intended impact on the participant, who will participate, will it be all of the participants in your program or just a certain subset, and how long will they be exposed to the intervention or the curriculum. And also provide some quantitative data that's external to any data generated by programming through CSC. So any programming information that provides quantitative data related to the intervention or the curriculum that shows positive substantiated results over time. And then, of course, copy paste any URLs, particularly for curriculum that has a developer site that's provides a lot of information and opportunity to actually purchase the curriculum typically. And any related research, evaluation materials, journal articles that substantiate that intervention or curriculum as meeting these terminology. Next slide, please.
Just want to take a moment. It looks like Nicole raised her hand. Nicole King.
Sorry, I probably really didn't mean to do that. But
Oh, okay.
I did want to mention I am answering questions in the Q&A box. So if you have questions, please just post them there. If I don't know the answer, I will find the person that does know the answer.
Okay, in the same narrative field as the prior slide, you'll also be asked to provide a brief description of your overall evaluation plan. If you've submitted to CSC in the past an evaluation or QA plan, please submit this plan within the online application, because we will have reviewers that do not know anything about your program. They're external to CSC, and we want to have as much information presented as possible. As to your evaluation plan, please submit a brief description in that answer field that indicates how your organization ensures that interventions are implemented to ensure fidelity and to achieve the expected beneficial effects that we want. And describe any QA protocol or methods to make sure or to ensure that data and outcomes are collected, scored, measured accurately, and timely reported. And also, do you have a feedback loop? How is actual data and outcomes that you collect or realize through your program, how is that provided as feedback to the program to improve it and or to readjust fidelity? Next slide, please. Okay, measurement tools and methodology. That is a second narrative response that's within the application, allows you to narratively respond. The definition of validated instrument is within the application, and it basically refers to any test or measurement determined to measure what it was designed to measure with consistent results over time. And so for every measurement tool or instrument or measurement methodology that you're proposing to be aligned with your program, please give a brief description of the validated instrument or identify it as validated, standardized, or a not validated test or survey. And briefly describe for each one what it's intended to measure, the recommendations for administration and scoring. For example, is it a higher score on the post? Is it a higher average on the post? Or is it meant to determine skills or assess a particular area every X number of months? And how improvement or meaningful gain is determined. And as well with this area, please upload any materials that are pertinent to the measurement instrument. A lot of measurement instruments are revised and reassessed, and different researchers look at those instruments with their programming. So this is a chance that even if you're a currently funded CSCMC program, as well as new to us in proposing, please look up the most recent research related to the instrument and upload those materials. And if your measurement methodology is a benchmark citation, for example, you are trying to meet a national or a state mandate or benchmark, then upload material to cite what those benchmark levels are. Next slide, please. Within the online application, for every performance measure that you want to enter into the application related to your program, the application is going to walk you through responses for each one and ask you a set number of questions for each one. And that will include the number of associated participants that are specifically related to that performance measure. So it may not be your whole universal field of participants, or it might be separated out by age range or by certain specific behaviors that you're targeting with a particular subset of your total population. It's also going to ask you to set a target percentage for each performance measure and how meaningful improvement will be established. So a target percentage would be a standard target set for the percent of participants that you expect to achieve each outcome or measure. It may be that you expect 100 participants associated with that performance measure, and that you're going to set a target percentage that 80 or 85% of those participants will meet the outcome or the measure that you proposed. As well, meaningful improvement basically means the criteria that is set to determine whether a participant has demonstrated significant gain related to each of the outcomes. For example, are you proposing that the post-test will be a higher score than the pretest or has a set benchmark been reached. As well, in this part of the application, you're going to be asked to upload the measurement tool or the measurement methodology that's associated with each performance measure. And as you can see on the bottom of the screen, is the typical formulation that results from going through the steps for the entry of each performance measure. So what percentage, it'll end up with a percentage of the participants will, for example, learn information, acquire a specific skill, as shown by, in this example, a post versus a pre-score, or a measure increase of X%. So I usually refer to that as the lift on the post side, and often it's determined by research or prior outcome data, excuse me, or it's set perhaps by the curriculum that's associated with that performance measure. I do want to say that for the most part, that formulation meets most of the performance measures that are important to a program. Once in a while, though, individual assessments or the scores that are generated from a particular measurement or methodology doesn't fit this formulation. And so if that happens, we want fidelity. We don't want you to change how you deliver a service if it's evidence-based, et cetera. We don't want you to mash into this formulation if the intention doesn't meet this kind of standardized taxonomy. And so in that instance, please upload into the system a description of what you're trying to measure, how you're trying to measure it, if it's a little different than a target percentage, et cetera. Or you might want to provide narrative response in one of the former response fields. So we're looking forward, I know I'm looking forward to reading your proposals. And at the bottom of each screen in the application, on the online application, is an ask a question field. Kara will be responding to that too. And so I love questions in this area, and feel free to send any question that will help you respond to these requirements of the application, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thanks, Chanda. Is there anyone, any questions that we need to address before we move forward?
Kara, there's one question from Jackie Price that I think perhaps others have, and they have, Jackie, I believe, is with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and they have a mental health component within their program. They are an out of school time, after school time program. Question was whether this is an appropriate RFP to ask for expansion of that element of that program.
Laura, do you want to take the answer to that question?
Sure. That application through your mental health professional actually came in under the OST school to work priority area. So that is actually where that program is categorized. So that would not be, this would not be necessarily the appropriate place to apply. We can't tell people not to apply, but that is under our after school OST category.
And if I can just add to that, like Laura said, we certainly invite anyone who feels that it's appropriate to apply. But know this, that if your primary program objectives fit better within a different priority area and has been categorized in that different priority area in the past, and you want to come in under this priority area because you have a need to enhance or increase services for some augmentation that you did for an OST program, for example, that you'll be competing with other programs that are whose primary role and objectives and goals are completely within the healthy children priority. So it's something to consider in terms of who do you want to go against in this kind of situation.
And I also, there's a couple of other questions that I thought would be good to answer live. One, I just want to, for Sabrina's question about the recording of the presentation, we are going to share the PowerPoint, but I do not believe the recording can be shared. So I just wanted to clarify that it's the PowerPoint. And for Samantha's question, for those of you who are proposing more than one program, please continue to submit your separate applications for the different programs. And then internally, that would be a decision internally if, as we move forward, if we think it makes sense to collapse that into one contract. But for now, we would like to review those proposals separately.
Laura, just a correction, I'm sorry. We are recording this meeting. That becomes a public record.
Okay,
So it is available to be shared. For training purposes, I think the question relates to someone who wanted to share that with other members of their team that were not able to join us today, and that's perfectly appropriate. I think we have a little uncertainty about whether the question board can be shared or becomes part of the recording. We'll capture as many of these questions as we can that pertain perhaps to more than the one person we're answering them for, but we will answer them as we go through this presentation.
Anything else to add before we move forward?
I think I would like to just call attention to Lucinda's question regarding the budget that Zach responded to. That the agency budget is requested for October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022. But I do want to point out that there is actually, although in our previous strategic plan and rollout of priority areas, many of our programs received continued contracts. And while the question talks about the grant covering 5 years, that is not necessarily a guarantee. That has to do with depending on if programs are in good standing or that they're meeting their outcomes and performance measures. So I don't want anyone to assume that just if you're awarded funding under this health priority area, that it's guaranteed for 5 years.
Okay. I can move forward if we're ready. Okay. Hey everybody, I'm Kara Good. I am one of the other contract specialists here at CSC, and I'm here to talk you through the online application. The online application is under the umbrella of SAMUS. So for those of you who are currently funded, know and love SAMUS like I do, you know where to find it. But you did receive, through probably several different opportunities, to see the link to the application. And that's on our website. It was sent to you via email. There's several different opportunities to click on the link that'll bring you directly to a dashboard page where you can start your application for the Healthy Children Priority. So definitely go to our website for that information, which is listed here on your screen. I do want to say that though it is set up in the idea that it is browser neutral, meaning you can use any browser at all to access the application, the recommended browser is Google Chrome. So in the event that your default browser is set up as Safari or Firefox or some other browser, I would recommend that you change it to Google Chrome in order to prevent any glitchy snags and or pickles that you might run into. So I am a resource to you if you have problems. There is also an opportunity within the application to ask a question. And Chanda mentioned that earlier in the presentation. I will show you how to get to that function. It's actually on each page of the application. You can click a button and ask a question, and then that actually opens it up to more people to potentially respond to your question quicker than it might be to send a message to me directly and independently. So we have actually a team of people answering the ask a questions, the questions that get posed through that function. So I'm going to walk you through parts of the application kind of in a live format, but I did want to show you the very beginning of the application process has a couple of things I want to bring to your attention, and I didn't want to go through it live because it can be a bit tedious. So when starting your application, the first thing that it asks for is for you to choose your agency from the drop-down list. If you're currently funded, you're going to find yourself there. If you're not currently funded, you might find yourself there if you've ever been funded before. But if you're not listed, you would click the button that says agency not listed and then enter in your SunBiz number. This is something that is a little bit glitchy in the sense that if you don't put it in exactly with the 2 digits, the dash and the remaining digits, it may show an error. It's going to show that it's either validated or not when you submit. So if you come to a situation where you enter in your SunBiz number, you know it's the right number, and you believe your agency is eligible to apply, and it still doesn't validate that number, and you run into a stumbling block right there. This doesn't happen very often, but on rare occasions it does. You would send an email to our email address at cscmc@cscmc.org and include your business name, the address, and the actual FEI number. And we will go behind the scenes, validate your organization if that's the case, and then fix it so that your agency would be listed the next time you go into the application. So hopefully that won't be an issue for any of you, but if it is, that's how to handle it. The next step would be to name your application. This is really important in general, just to make sure that your organization and the program name is included, but it's especially important when you have multiple programs within one organization as the applicant. So making sure that it's very clear to the reader what program we are reading the proposal for. It also gives you the opportunity at the very beginning of your application, which is a cool function, to give several people or one other person an authorization to use the application and access it. It's the nice system because it allows for a couple different people, as many people as you authorize, to access and work within the application online at the same time. The only time when it becomes an issue is if you're working in the same section at the same time. You'll actually know if someone else who's authorized to access your application is on the same section as you, because their name will pop up on the bottom of your screen and you can tell that they're working within that same section. The part that gets tricky is that if both of you are making changes, then whoever goes on to the next page first is whose changes will be saved. So I don't recommend that you work within the same section at the same time, but you can certainly work within the application. So if you have, your fiscal folks who are working on the things that are budget related and your program folks that are working on your program related questions, those are very different sections of the application and you shouldn't run into any problems being able to access it. If later in the process you decide, ooh, we really need so-and-so to be added to this because she needs to review it before we submit, you can always add more authorized users as time goes on within the application, and I'll show you how to do that. The last portion that I wanted to go through with you are the pre-application questions. These are ones that we kind of referred to when Nicole was speaking during the PowerPoint about what makes an organization eligible for funding. So these are some questions that are really important to read carefully and answer correctly. If you accidentally put no where the answer should have been yes, it can create a little stumbling block where you have to go out of the application process altogether, start a new application altogether, because this is sort of like a big glaring light to the system that you're not eligible should you answer any of these questions incorrectly. If you have any problems because you fat fingered it and answered yes when you should have answered no, and then you can't get back in and you're having issues, feel free to reach out and we can help you reset it. So before I go on to the next section, which will be showing you from our development site, what the application actually looks like and how to navigate it, I just want to give space for any questions that might have come up before I move on. Nope. Okay. Sounds good. All right, everybody see the application? Just nod your heads, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, good. So this is our application. When you click on the link from our website, it's going to bring you to a page that looks very much like this one. It is our dashboard. It will have several things right here from this first page. It speaks to eligibility criteria, the fact that it's a competitive process, gives you information with regards to the strategic plan, and that it's for the Healthy Children Priority Funding area. So you might notice that this at the top of the screen says development. This is a testing site that we use. So I'm not in the live site right now. There may be a couple little things that look a little different. So try not to get hung up on that. But the idea is that you would come in, click your start a new application button, either here or up at the top, and it'll bring you to those 3 pages that I just showed you in the screenshots from the PowerPoint. I've already started an application, so I'm going to click into one here in a moment to show you how to navigate through sections and some little things that I felt was important for you to know. But before I do that, I just want to show you that it does show you the due date on the top of your screen. And it also shows you the time remaining, which is a nice function. As a matter of fact, as the countdown goes down a little bit further and gets closer to the deadline, I think in the last 24 hours, it turns red. So that'll be a good reminder for anybody who likes to work under a deadline and wait till the very last minute to do things that'll give you a little extra stress. Then we also have the ask a question function right here. You can do it from this page, but you'll see other opportunities throughout the application to do that as well. But I also want to show you some of the items on the timeline. This was reviewed by Laura during the PowerPoint, but it does highlight that right here. It also speaks to the fact that the announcement for this funding won't be made until August of this year. And keeping in mind that the funding cycle actually goes from October 1st until September 30th. You'll see that if there are questions that were asked by other proposers that might benefit the entire group, we'll publish the answer. If it's generic enough that it would apply and benefit everyone, we'll publish the question and answer here. So you'll see other questions that might benefit you before you ask a question. You might want to check those to see if your answers have already been defined. And then if you have questions that are just yours, they'll show up here. It'll say my question. So I'll show you how that works. When you select a category, either fiscal, general, or about services, you can post your question to our team and say, when is this application due? Submit your question. And then what do you know? Your question is there. You'll also see the answer there when it is answered. If it is a question that would apply to the common good, we'll publish it and you'll see it up here as well. Another thing to remember is there is on this dashboard space for some resources. The resources that we have listed is our new exciting 2021 to 2026 strategic plan. We also have the chart of accounts, which is very handy for your fiscal team when creating the budget. It does define what goes where, and so you can properly build your budget around our chart of accounts, which you can access here. And then we also have our newly updated, as of January 2021, our program and funding policies. So I just want to bring your attention to one part in the strategic plan. It actually brings you to our link on our website. And on that, you'll find the actual PDF file with the strategic plan available to access. But then as you scroll down, you'll also see some additional files that are separate from the strategic plan document, but are equally important for you to look at and review and be familiar with. So there's some key demographics and statistics that are specific to Martin County, as well as the community-based quantitative data and related research that was that the strategic plan was built upon. So all very important documents for you to look at. Coming back to the dashboard, I just want to take a moment before I move forward and make sure there's no questions that need answering. Dave says no. Okay, so we'll move forward into the actual application so you can see what it looks like. You can see I've already started it. So those first 3 pages with the pre-application questions and titling it, I titled it the Test App Proposers Conference. For the title of the application, you'll see a lot of the same things that you saw on the dashboard: your time remaining, counting down, your due date. And when you click the modify button, the view application default will just show you the application itself, anything that you've already answered. But when you click modify, that'll give you the opportunity to make changes within the application. You can bounce around between sections. You don't have to go in order. There is opportunity to make changes and not, so you don't have to make changes on a certain section and then mark the section completed before you go anywhere. You're actually saving your responses at any time you click next. So when you click next, anything that you've worked on for this page will be saved and you'll be able to go back to it. This mark the section completed function is really important because all of your sections have to be marked completed before you can submit. And it also has some system in place where if there's a mandatory question that you haven't answered, it'll come up with an error that says, hey, you haven't answered this question. So in this case, there's a couple questions I haven't answered. It'll say, hey, we found some areas that need addressing, and they'll name the things that you haven't responded to. So if you unmark that and then click next, it'll let you go on to the next section. As I said, you can come in and work in any section you want and bounce around between them. So something to remember is anytime there is an asterisk next to a field like this one and like this one, that means that the question is mandatory. There are very few opportunities to skip questions. So most, if not all, of our fields are mandatory, but you might run into 1 or 2 that are not. So I'll bring your attention to the application information. There's little sections that sometimes have some text that is there for your benefit. So I recommend that you read through it. For example, here's an introduction. You can close that so that you have more opportunity for the section that you'll be modifying. In this, I just recommend that you overall, for the whole application, that you read each question carefully, answer them as thoroughly and completely as you can. And for anybody who's applied under this Healthy Children priority in the past, look at this with fresh eyes. Certainly do not recommend copying and pasting from old applications because we anticipate over the last 5 years that you'll have new and innovative things to talk to us about. As Dave said at the beginning of our presentation, it's important to remember that though I might be very familiar with your program, Nicole might be very familiar with your programs, because we work with you daily, there are people who are reviewing your applications who have no idea what you do or how you do it. So it's very important that you write it as if someone who's never heard of your organization or program is reading it, because that might be the case. So in this situation, for the application information, you'll see it says select new entry. There's plenty of opportunities throughout the application where you see this new entry button, and you can click it as many times as you need to completely answer the question. You can see that I've already entered in Charlie Brown as our CEO and his information. And in order to complete the answer to this question, this is obviously not completed, you would also click new entry to put in your finance director's information, your program director's information, and your board chair's information. Then once all 4 of those positions are outlined and defined, you would mark the section complete and click next. As I said, anytime you click next, you're saving what you've written. Let's see if there's anything in particular I want to bring your attention to. So within the questions, a lot of the narrative questions have all this stuff here. What that does is give you some really nice opportunities for formatting that a lot of the online applications that I've seen for grant proposals don't offer. So it does, of course, count your words. It does have a word limit, so pay attention to that. As you type, you'll see the count go up. There are options for you to use the tools to do really cool things like add bullet items or underline or change the font color or use bold or italicize and all those other nice functions. The other thing to remember is that there is an opportunity to utilize and lean on a bit the spell check and the grammar check that is inherent within this system. So if you were to write something that is misspelled or the grammar's not correct, then it will give you some guidance on how to correct it. You'll see that this number 2 here in the bottom right-hand corner of the field is indicating that there's 2 issues. If you hover over it, it gives you some options to correct what is wrong. In this case, it's that the sentence didn't start with an uppercase letter. But you'll notice that I didn't finish my thought here, so it's not going to help you in that end, and I don't want you to lean on it entirely. Always good to have more than one set of eyes to look through what you've written and make sure that all of your text is making sense and is conveying what you would like it to convey. I want to bring your attention to one question here about COVID-19. This is a question that you may have seen if you have any programs that applied under any of the applications that were released since COVID's happened. And so we do have this question here that's asking you to describe the impact COVID-19's had on your operations. We want you to be thoughtful here and talk about in this answer the ways that service delivery might look if COVID-19 is still as much of a concern as it has been, or post-COVID-19, how service delivery might shift. This is something that we want you to be thoughtful about and talk about within your application. I'll move on to a different section of the application. In understaffing, for example, there are some questions that have been reworded. If you're real familiar with how some of our application questions have been before, please take time to read through it, be thoughtful with your answer. The program activities and the measurement section that we're going to go to here are connected. So a lot of the times in our minds, we're thinking that your performance measurements are going to be connected to a certain activity. So keep that in mind as you're outlining what your program activities are in your application. Again, here you'll see that new entry button. And know that when you're trying to save an entry, if you don't know the answers to some of these things and you want to save your entry anyways, and you're leaving anything blank, it won't let you. So within each entry, that you need to add, if you don't know all the answers to each of these mandatory fields, you won't be able to save the entry. So you'd have to put in something. So you would enter your activity title. You'll notice that as I'm demonstrating, it has some different items here that are in the drop-down menu, but that's really personal to my application because I've played around with this and tested the application before this time. So it's going to show me what I've typed in the past. In your case, as you start a brand new application for the first time, there's nothing to choose from. So don't get confused by that part from my demo. I apologize for any confusion about that. You'll describe the actual activity. So in this case, create Brilliant Children. You'll enter days of the week. Again, the drop downs are here because I've entered these numbers before and it's helping me move faster through it. You'll enter in your numbers and then click Save Entry. Once you do that, you'll see that it all comes up on the screen here, just like our example did. And you'll do that clicking New Entry every time you want to add a new program activity. You can do that as many times as you need to. And then when you're done, mark the section completed and click Next. You can skip marking the section completed if you know you have more to enter and click Next, so it'll save that entry and go back to it when you're ready. So there's no expectation that you have to complete the section before moving on. The measurement section is what we had Chanda going through with you during the PowerPoint section. This is where you're going to enter the time frame that your activity is being provided, linked to that particular performance measurement. And here's where we want you to relate the performance measurement that you're going to be measuring against a certain activity that you've outlined in this section before. So whatever you titled that section in the program activities field, then you would duplicate that here so that we know what this is related to. Then here's a new field that's asking for you to define the number of participants associated with this measure in particular. So there's oftentimes when an organization or a program will be serving 1,000 kids, but 50 of them are going to be focused on this activity with this related performance measurement. And so we want you to be thoughtful about what subsets of kids, or if it is your whole population, are going to be related to this performance measurement. How many kids are we going to be counting? How many families are we going to be counting with this performance measurement? And then here's the information with regards to the target percentage, the actual measure itself, the admin points, and you'll notice each one has some information about how we define that, meaningful improvement, and you'll notice that it does require a performance measurement tool upload. So this asterisk means that you must upload a performance measurement tool upload, but there are times when you might not have a pre-post assessment. Maybe you're using statewide benchmarks for what you're comparing it to. And in that case, you have to upload something. So the best way that I can describe for you to handle that would be to pull up a Word document, explain what benchmark you are using, maybe point us in the direction of where we can find that information within your Word document and upload that here. Is there anything, Chanda, that you want to add to that while we're on this page?
No, you did wonderfully.
Okay, thanks. And then, so since I didn't have anything entered, I won't be able to save anything. I'm pressing cancel. And the next section is with regards to research proven, evidence-based, and research-based elements of your program. Here you'll see those definitions and some of the questions that were referred to by Chanda during her section. So again, you'll see information here. Note that the word count is a little higher for these questions to give you more space. One thing I want to bring your attention to is with regards to collaborative agreements. We anticipate that many of you will have collaborative agreements with other organizations or programs in the community. However, we do want you to limit what you list and upload here to programs, to collaborative partners that without them, the program wouldn't be successful. So really vital partners that are a critical part of your program. There is some information about that here. I think almost exactly the same language I just said. So only entering the collaborative agreements for which without them, the program would not be successful. Something else, you may have subcontractors that you're proposing for this proposed program. And with that, we want to know the information about who they might be and what they're going to provide, but we don't require that you have subcontract agreements in place with the application. That is something that we understand, that because subcontract agreements typically mean an exchange of money between you as the provider and the person or vendor you would be subcontracting with, that you'll wait until you know whether or not your proposal has been approved and funded. In that situation, we will, though, ask for the subcontract agreement prior to executing your contract. So the subcontract agreements, along with the respective certificates of insurance for the subcontractor, will be required, but not at the time of application. So I feel like that's a good time to stop and see if there's any questions before I move forward. Okay. So I guess I'm just doing such a super job here. Nobody has any questions. With regards to being able to come in at any point of your section within the application, you'll notice I just want to bring your attention to the ask a question function here. You can do it from any page. So right here at the top of the section, each section you go to will have the ask a question option for you. So let me just make sure I can find something that will give you an idea of some hints. Once in a while, you'll see that we have some hints available for you that we've put in to certain fields. Here we go. So this is our budget table. I'm skipping around a little bit. I'm going to come back to this, but I just want to make sure that I don't forget to tell you that when you see this little I for information, it's an opportunity for us to say, you know what, this can be a little bit of a confusing field. Why don't we give them a little bit more information here? So this is just to help give you a hint on what we're looking for. So when the field is named CSCMC costs for this line item, what we're looking for is how much do you want CSC to pay for this line item? So again, in the next field, it says CSC currently budgeted cost for this line item. So that we wanted to clarify that if you're currently funded, you would write down what that amount is currently. And if you're not currently funded, just enter 0. So those are some hints that you'll find kind of throughout. So that little I is there for your help. When you hover over it, you'll be able to see what I mean. Under the, oops, sorry, cushion cancel. I tried to move on without entering all the information and it said I couldn't. So when you click on the funding section, this is something that's a little new. What we're asking for is for you to use this section to list any other funders for this proposed program. We anticipate that you're going to have a diversified funding base, that we won't be the sole funder for the program, with rare exceptions. And so with that in mind, we wanted to create this section for you to enter in all of your other fundings, whether that be contributions and fundraising, another funding source through the Community Foundation or the Community Chest or United Way or whomever, and you list those funders here, what the amount is. You'll notice there's a section for document upload. And that really comes in if your application is meant to be matching funding for some other source. So if your primary source is requesting a local match, and that's part of this application process, this is where it is required that you enter or upload proof of the primary funding sources here. That is not something that's required for any other type of funding at this point. So you'll notice that the asterisks are in place for these two fields, for the name of the other funders plus the amount that they're funding, but the proof is an optional field and you would only use that if you were applying for match funding. Moving on, the staffing table. The staffing table is something that can be a little tedious if you have several of the same positions. So if you are employing 5 caseworkers or 30 therapists, you would need to do a separate entry for each position. So that can be a little tedious. It does require that you have the job description uploaded for each entry. So you'll do it over and over again. One thing that you'll notice is that when you do upload files, whether it be the pre and post assessments or your measurement tools, whatever they might look like, your job descriptions, you'll notice that this section over here will show what those files are. So it's a cool function. If you needed to update that, you could go back into the field. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If you do an entry, for example, and you realize, oh no, I put Charlie Brown as the chief executive officer, but he's actually the fiscal director. Then you can just click on the line that you entered. I'll show you that one more time because I did that pretty quickly. So here it is, what you've already entered, and you say, oh no, I need to make an adjustment here. It's not too late. You just have to click anywhere on this line. And when you click on that line, it'll open those fields back up, and you can then change the title to whatever it is that you would like to do. Click Save Entry, and the correction will have been made. The budget table. I was here a moment ago, but this is where you'll go through each line item, click New Entry for each line item for which there are costs for your program. Remember that we're looking for total program budget, not just what you're asking for from CSC. So you may have items that CSC, for example, doesn't fund, as Zach mentioned. In this line item, we have food and nutrition. CSC doesn't fund food, but it might be a program cost that someone else's funding is supporting, or maybe you're taking it out of your general contributions. And so here you would be able to list the proposed program cost. Let's say it's $500. And then here for the CSC costs, you would obviously put 0. For CSC currently budgeted would be 0, and then it's naturally going to calculate any variances here. If there is a variance to speak of, if it's plus or minus 15% or more than $500, you would put a variance explanation. This is something that I know was mentioned on the PowerPoint slide for Zach, but is there anything that you need to say about this section? It's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, if there's a change from one year to the next because you're currently funded, we want to know why. Why is there a change? So is it because this cost is going to be higher because you're proposing to serve more participants, for example? Or is there some other change that you can explain to help us better understand why there's a change from the last time you proposed a budget? There are a little bit of some hints here, like for example, if it doesn't apply, just put NA. It is a required field, so you'll have to put something. And then your budget narrative hint was explained in detail how these costs were derived, but you did hear some great explanation from Zach about how to be specific, but not too specific. So if you ever have questions, know that we're available to you for help and assistance and guidance along the way. The last section that I definitely wanted to go through with you is the supporting documents section. I've already added a couple of samples. You'll see them here underneath my files, but we're looking for several supporting documents. We need a list of your board of directors, your most recent 990, your audit, and we're also looking for the budget for your organization as projected to include the CSCMC requested funds for this proposal. We're looking for certificates of insurance for your organization. You'll remember that we're not looking for them as they relate to any subcontractor agreements, but we are looking for them as it relates to your organization itself. And there is a very long, very detailed, very thorough policy that you can reference in our CSCMC program and funding policies within your resources or straight from our website to be able to read through what it is exactly that we're looking for. And then there's also been several mentions of whether if there's any applicants that don't feel that they would be able to comply with contractual agreements, our contractual requirements, or any of our program and funding policies, that your executive director has to submit a letter requesting a waiver, and that should be uploaded here within the supporting documents. You'll notice that all of the documents are required except for the waiver request, because we don't anticipate that everyone will need a waiver request, but there's a couple that might, and so we wanted to create a space for you to do that. We also have a requirement for you to upload your plan for adhering to CDC guidelines as it relates to COVID-19 or in general infectious diseases. So once you're done uploading everything, you would select mark this section completed and save and close. So the one thing I want to make sure to remind you of is that each of the sections need to have green check marks in order for you to submit your application. Once you have all green check marks, you still have to go through the step of clicking submit. So even if it says 100% here to indicate that every single one of these sections have been checked as complete and every one of the mandatory fields have been answered, you still have to go through an additional step of clicking submit. So that's nice to know, because many of us will be writing our application drafts and want a couple different people to review and approve before you click submit. So knowing that even though everything is 100% complete and all your sections have green check marks next to them, you still have to go through that additional step. So you could give someone access to your application who needs to be in a kind of review and approval role and get that approval before you submit to us. Once you submit, you can't make changes to your application. So remember that as well. And that deadline is also very important to remember. So you have 28 days, 5 hours, 41 minutes, and 51 seconds left to submit your application. This is a good opportunity for me to make sure that I didn't miss anything, get feedback from the team to see if there's anything that I forgot to review.
Kara, there was one question that perhaps that has been answered that might help others. And that question had to do with whether someone could upload a Microsoft Word file for the text files.
Absolutely. You'll see here that I have a PDF. I have a couple Word docs, and you could upload any kind of document. For example, an Excel spreadsheet for your organizational budget, any type of document you can upload. Did that answer the question?
Well, we answered it yes, so yes.
Okay. Is there anything else? And Laura, I remember that the last time we talked this through, there was something I forgot to mention, but I don't know what that was anymore.
The one issue, once you mark complete, and I think you covered it, is that if you decided to change it, you can go back and change it and modify it, even if you've completed it.
Right, exactly. So though, I mean, prior to submission, you can go back and edit anything that you've already entered. For example, in the primary and group participants section, I had put in some examples of what that might look like. So if I say, oh, you know what, these numbers aren't right, we're not going to go all the way up to 75, you can just click on that line, it'll reopen it, and you can modify your answer to read something else. Click save, and there your changes will be represented. Anything that any other members of the team want me to review? Because I think that I've gone through what I intended to. Oh, there was one piece. Let me make sure. So for program alignment, we all know that anyone coming into this application is looking to be funded under the Healthy Children Program priority area. And here you'll find information about what the subcategories are. So in the question below about program alignment, we're asking you to explain how the goal of the proposed program aligns with the funding priority area of healthy children, but also include what ways the program the proposed program addresses one or more of the subcategories. And so just for your reference, the subcategories are outlined right here above the questions. And then trying to remember where that other question was. Maybe under program summary, no. So one of the questions about capacity changes, just remember that, you know, there's different answers depending on if you're currently funded or not. Just pay attention and be thorough about the questions. And I think that's, oh, here it is. So one of the questions that we've kind of had some answers that we thought, I wonder if they understood the question. So we wanted to make sure to take a moment during this proposers conference to talk to you about this question with regards to existing programs. So the question is, identify similar programs in Martin County that are currently serving the needs of the proposed program's target population. And some people are like, nobody does what we do. We are completely unique and no one can possibly come close to us. And I appreciate the confidence. However, I want you to be thoughtful about other programs that aren't doing exactly what you do in the way that you do it, but do complement and serve a similar population that you do. So we want you to do your homework here, basically. We want you to recognize that there are other organizations that may be serving the same population in different ways. And might complement or augment, and there might be potential for you to partner with them potentially in the future. So those are some things that I just wanted to bring to your attention because I recognize that there's an inclination to say nobody does it like us, and we appreciate that, but we do want to hear about other programs that you're familiar with, that you may already be working with, that you recognize and understand are serving a similar population as you. So. Again,
Kara, one of the questions that came earlier on was if the questions and answers would be available. I think what might be best is if we could post some of those in this question section so people would have it available within the application itself.
Sure. Yes, definitely. So if you did anybody take like screenshots of the questions? Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. So we can basically come in as if we are proposers and publish some questions and answers that we think might be helpful to the entire group for the common good. And you'll see them down at the bottom here at the Q&A section of your dashboard. So you can, I just want to show you real quick, you can navigate back and forth. So I just clicked into that application that I had already started. It's going to default to just view the application. So the biggest, trickiest part of this whole process is to remember to click modify. When you click modify, it gives you the opportunity to make any changes. If you want to go back to the view application portion, you'll see I just click contract details right here. If you want to go back to your dashboard, you click view solicitation. So there's ways to hop around. Don't panic. You can't break it. I've tried. So, and I was almost successful. So if I can't break it, then the chances are slim that you can break it. If you have issues, let us know. And I wish you all the best in your proposals.
Here, I have one question for you. I think I know the answer, but is there any limit to the number of documents that you can upload, or any space or file upper limit?
Not that I know of. I haven't seen that be a problem up until this point. So if you had like 30 job descriptions to upload, the system will allow it. I haven't seen any issues with size or limitations in that way. So if you do run into that problem, please post that question so we can work to resolve it. You know, there's a lot of things that I do know how to navigate around within this system, but I also have my own personal grants module Yoda that I go to when needed. So I can even bring it up the flagpole and see if anybody else might be able to assist us with any questions with technology that I'm not familiar with the answer. So we'll get the answer for you if you run into snags. I haven't seen that yet, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else? We can bring it back to our Hollywood Squares then. Here we go. And I'm officially going to stop talking because I'm sure you're tired of me.
Any other questions? I didn't see any hands raised. We tried to answer the questions as they came in, and I think that's a great idea to post those in the application itself, those key questions that perhaps others can benefit from the answers. So I too want to wish you success in this process. Please do not be shy about consulting with us at any time you're stuck or have a question. The module for grants has been greatly improved by those of you who have tested it in our partnership grant application process, and throughout that process we learned a good deal. We will learn again from this one. So I don't think you can break it. If Kara couldn't, I don't think you can. So don't be shy, use it and abuse it. And we look forward to receiving your applications. Is there anything else anybody else wants to add? Excellent. Okay, well, thank you for joining us in this virtual space. We look forward to a time when we can greet you in person, perhaps by the end of this process. I don't know, we'll see. But hopefully it worked well for you, and we will, I guess, I don't know whether there's an interest in receiving this recording. We are open to that. If any of you have the need for that, we'd be happy to do that. Just let Christine or one of the program staff know, and we will arrange for that. And then you can utilize this with your staff who weren't able to attend. Okay,